All right, let me ask you something. What if you could build a perfect society completely from scratch? And I don't mean just on paper, I mean for real. Well, today, we're going to dive into this really fascinating experiment that's trying to do exactly that. They're taking a regular American suburb and trying to turn it into a modern utopia. And the blueprint they're using? It's this wild mix of ancient wisdom and some seriously cutting-edge tech.
So this whole thing really kicks off with a massive question, right? What even is utopia? You know, the word itself literally means nowhere, an imaginary, perfect place. But what if it didn't have to be imaginary? What if utopia could be like a real address you could punch into your GPS?
And honestly, that's the whole idea right there. The thinking behind this project is that utopia isn't some fantasy you just dream about. Nope, it's a blueprint, something you can actually build. This whole thing is a living, breathing experiment to see if a totally normal American suburb can be turned into a real-deal sanctuary.
Okay, so how do you even start building a utopia? Well, let's begin with what the project calls its hardware. This is the actual physical foundation of the whole community.
Now, this is not your average housing development, not by a long shot. We're talking about these modular, climate-resilient homes. They're designed for something they call dignified density, which is a cool way of saying close-knit but not crowded. The entire place is basically a regenerative ecosystem. You've got permaculture food forests that work like natural forests, plus these closed-loop systems that recycle pretty much all the water and energy. And get this, the whole thing is even managed by an ethical AI called LotusMD.
And I know what you're thinking. This has got to be insanely expensive, right? But the economics here are actually pretty surprising. The total all-in cost for one of these homes, it's estimated at just over $100,000, and the target sale price is under $300,000. So, you see, this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky dream. It's a real business model. It's designed to make this whole vision affordable and, just maybe, scalable. But look, a community is way more than just bricks and mortar, right? So now let's get into what the project calls its software. This is the cultural and moral operating system that's supposed to hold everything together. And it's called the 7 Skills of Scripture. So what exactly is this framework? Well, think of it like a universal curriculum. It takes all this timeless wisdom from major world scriptures. We're talking the Bible, the Qur'an, the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, and it boils all that down into practical daily skills you can actually use to live a better life. It's totally interfaith, and the whole point is that it's all about action, not just belief. And here they are, the 7 core disciplines. It's a pretty fascinating mix, isn't it? You've got breathing, movement, gardening, fasting, shepherding, reading, and math. The whole idea here is to create this well-rounded curriculum that builds more capable, more resilient people. So let's do a quick flyby of each one.
First up, breathing. And this isn't just, breathing in and out. It's about mastering conscious breathing techniques, they call it breathology, to boost your respiratory strength and sharpen your mental focus.
Next is movement. This is all about building what the World Health Organization calls intrinsic capacity. It's basically the physical and mental juice we all need to really thrive. Think things like yoga, but also maybe even more dynamic stuff.
Third, we've got gardening. But again, this goes deeper than just planting some tomatoes. It's about using permaculture to create food systems that actually heal the earth. And it even asks this really profound question, can we learn to eat without killing? Fourth on the list is fasting. This skill taps into that ancient practice of taking periodic rest and renewal, something you find in just about every major faith around the world, from water fasts to dry fasts. Fifth is shepherding. Now this one is really interesting. It's not literally just about sheep, it's a metaphor for ethical leadership and taking care of things. They actually use the real-world practice of holistic animal grazing to teach these big principles about managing resources and caring for a community.
The 6th skill? Reading. Here, the goal is to master comprehension, to really absorb knowledge, using techniques like speed reading, chunking information, and quieting that little voice in your head when you read.
And finally, number 7 is math, specifically mental math frameworks like Vedic math. The idea is to sharpen your logic, your reasoning, and your problem-solving skills, all without reaching for a calculator.
Okay, so we've got the hardware, the physical community, and we've got the software, the 7 skills. It's an absolutely incredible vision, but and this is the big but. Can it actually work? Let's switch gears for a second and do a little reality check based on what the sources say. So get this, the project gave itself a pretty ambitious score of 92 out of 100 on its own utopian index. That's a very high bar to set for yourself. So let's dig in and see if that level of optimism is really justified.
Let's kick things off with governance. So the vision is this really cool White Lotus Council with global guardians all built on this strong ethical foundation. Sounds great, but here's the reality check. It is totally 100% unproven. It's a complex theory that has never been tested in the real world, and it opens up a can of worms. Like, who gets to pick these guardians? And are the local residents really going to be okay with some global council calling the shots?
All right, what about the housing? The dream of having affordable, innovative, modular homes? That's a huge plus. But the hurdles here are super real. Unconventional designs like these almost always smack into a brick wall of zoning laws and permit nightmares. And then there's the classic, not in my backyard problem. You always run the risk of pushback from neighbors who might just not get what the project is trying to do.
And then there's the money. The business plan is actually pretty smart. They've got multiple ways to make money, from selling the houses to tourism and education. But there's a giant question mark hanging over the market. Are people actually going to buy these homes? Will they pay for these workshops and retreats? And on top of all that, it requires a massive upfront investment, which makes the whole beginning phase incredibly risky.
So, when you weigh this incredible vision against all these very real challenges, where does that leave us? Well, the sources seem to frame this project not as some guaranteed success, but maybe as something even more important, a really provocative prototype.
There's this quote from the founder, Mudassar Malik, that I think just perfectly captures the spirit of the whole thing. He says, "We plant seeds for fruit trees whose shade we may never enjoy." You know, it's all about a long-term, selfless vision. It's for the people who come after us.
And that really brings us to the final big question. This project is a really bold attempt to prove that an ordinary suburb can become a sanctuary. But it leaves all of us to wonder, is this a real glimpse into the future of how we might live together? Or is utopia, just by its very name, destined to always remain nowhere? Definitely something to think about.